Welcome back to another episode of Barry's Barbecue. In today's episode, we're going to be cooking one of my favorite and quite possibly one of the best meats out there. This is a 20-pound prime piece of brisket. And today's focus isn't going to be the seasonings, it's going to be how we're going to cook it. In past experience, I've had the best luck using butcher paper. But what we're going to try today is a little bit different. What we're going to do is we'll get this seasoned up. I'll walk you through those steps here in a little bit. We're going to throw it out on the smoker, let it smoke all night unwrapped. And normally in the morning, I would wrap it up in butcher paper, let it get up to 201, take it off, make sure it feels good and tender, put it in the cooler, do all of that. But this time we're going to add one step in between. We're going to go put it on the smoker tonight, let it cook all night. And in the morning, instead of using butcher paper, we're going to wrap it in foil, which, has been done before. But then once this brisket hits around 185 degrees, we're going to pull it back off, unwrap it from the foil, put the butcher paper on it, and see if we can't get that good bark to come back, but keep all the moisture that foil typically gives us. Okay, so let's get in here close so we can go ahead and see what it's like, first off, to trim this brisket.
Okay, let's take a look at this brisket and how we're going to trim it. First off, there's this big vein of fat that we're going to cut out of it. Get that piece taken care of. Once that piece is done, we're going to flip it over, take all the fat pretty much off of the point side of the meat, and then leave about 1/4 inch of fat on the flat side. And then we'll round out the edges to make it look shaped nice and good for us. Remember, when we put it on the smoker tonight, we're going to do it around between 2 to 225 degrees. And then once we wrap it in the morning, we may bump that up to 225 to 250. And after that, we'll know she's ready to be taken off when she hits around 201 degrees on her internal temp. We'll throw it in a cooler and let it rest for 2 to 4 hours.
All trimmed up, we can see all that beautiful marbling on the point side. Now we're gonna season it. I gotta give a shout out to Malcolm Reed here with his Killer Hogs seasonings. They're so good. I've tried doing my own. I've got them pretty close, but he must have a little extra magic in there. So we're just gonna use his today. And for brisket, I really like the hot rub. If I'm doing more pork things, I like the sweeter piece on just the barbecue rub. So we're gonna do hot. And I'm gonna start out giving it a good heavy coat, right? The back piece where the fat isn't gonna soak in as much, but we still want everything to have a nice even color, so we're gonna try to give everything the same amount of coat. So we're gonna get it everywhere on this side. And then remember what I was talking about in the last video is don't be afraid to use a lot of seasoning. A good rule of thumb I've lived by is whoever I'm typically cooking for, I keep adding seasoning until they tell me, one of the cooks that I do, that it has too much seasoning, too much salt, too much flavor, whatever it is, and then I back it off a little bit on my next cook. Now I've been cooking for my family for quite a few years, so I have a pretty good idea of what they want. So that's looking pretty good. We're gonna hit it with some of the Texas piece as well. What this is mostly is coarse ground pepper and salt, but some other herbs and spices in there as well. It just goes so well with it. It helps it give it a nice bite on the bark. Remember, a good coating of this hot rub. This is where you're gonna get that really good color, but also the amazing flavor. Let's talk about how we're gonna cook this and what we're gonna do in our next steps. So I'm gonna season this here, and then we're gonna let it set for a good 2 hours. It's almost 9 o'clock here my time. So we're gonna let this sit until almost 11 o'clock tonight, which is perfect, because then I'm gonna let it sit out on the smoker for 8 hours uncovered at 225 degrees. So I'll get up in the morning, come out 7 a.m., check it. Most likely by then it'll be time to wrap it and we'll be ready to go. Remember, we're gonna wrap in foil tomorrow morning instead of the typical butcher paper. See if we can't keep some of that moistness going. And then at the end of the cook, the last 2 hours or so, we're gonna do with the butcher paper. We're gonna put it into butcher paper. Miss that spot. See, you gotta get everywhere. All right, now we're gonna go back to the Texas rub. If you guys haven't tried these rubs, they're amazing. And what's nice, now this chunk of meat can sit here for the next couple of hours, come up to room temperature a little bit more, let it really start soaking in a lot of these flavors. The edges need love too, don't forget that. All right, quick 2 hours for you, long 2 hours for me. It's one of my favorite things is putting the meat out on the smoker. This piece of meat looks like it's ready. You can see it's already got a darker color because it started absorbing a lot of that seasoning we put on it. You can even see it starting to sweat some. That salt's starting to really work into the meat and do its magic. Before we do go put it out on the smoker though, I am gonna put in a probe. Not because the meat's gonna be anywhere near done in the morning, but I just wanted to track the ambient temperature of the smoker that I have. My current model doesn't have one of those. Main reason is I don't want the Traeger to get caught on fire, and then I go out and the meat's burned, my house is burned down. The other reason is I don't want the smoker to go out. So I don't want to go out there in the morning and have a frozen piece of meat because it's the middle of winter. I want a piece of meat that's sitting between 150 to 160 degrees. All right, so I'm gonna shove the probe in here and let's go fire it up. All right guys, sorry, I know it's really dark, it's late. Just real quick, we're throwing it on, it's 11 o'clock. Like I said, I'll be out here again at 7 a.m. Let's get one more shot of just the meat. You see it's on there, you see I did get the probe stuck in. Once again, that's only to check the temperature on my Traeger. It's not to do anything with the meat gonna be done in the morning. Let's go see how she's looking, should we? It's looking really good. Look at the color we got on it. It's been on for almost exactly 8 hours, just a little bit more. It's the color we're wanting. This is the test we're gonna do. Okay. See how those seasonings just stay on there, they're not coming off. Starting to feel a little bit softer. She's got a long ways to go though. I'll see you inside. All right, we got her off the smoker, we brought her inside. You can get a better look at that coloring we're getting on it now. It's looking really good. Remember, normally, this is when I would get out the butcher paper and wrap it. This time we're gonna wrap it in the foil. Then we'll put our probe back in, and now we're gonna start watching internal temps. Because I'm gonna pull this back off the grill once this hits around 100 to 185 degrees. Unwrap it, put it back put it into butcher paper. Now, how I like to wrap these is I get the wider foil, so this is the 18-inch foil. Lay 2 of them down for this big of a brisket. You can also see it shrunk up quite a bit over the night. And then I pull up one side, kind of lay it down flat. And then I grab the other side. I'm gonna lay it down flat as well. And then we're gonna grab our first end. I'm gonna fold that up and over. There she goes, she's ready to go back on. Now remember, the big difference between butcher paper and foil is this foil is gonna hold in a lot of that moisture and steam, and it's gonna actually start steaming our meat as opposed to letting some of that steam seep through like the butcher paper does. That's why the butcher paper gets you such a nice thick bark. Let's hope we get the best of both worlds with what we're doing. We'll see you in a few hours. Okay, I just pulled it off the smoker. It's been in the foil. I left it on a little bit longer than I was planning. It's sitting at about 190 degrees right now. Temperatures really do fly up a lot faster than in the foil than in the butcher paper. So we're gonna unwrap it here. This is something I've never done before, unwrapping it to re-wrap something. And it did exactly what we thought it was gonna, right? All that beautiful bark we built, it's still there, but now it's kind of soggy because it's steamed out from the foil. So I'm gonna pull this off here, put it on the butcher paper. I'll be right back in 1 minute. Okay, so we pulled it off. We're gonna wrap it in the butcher paper now. You can see what it looks like. It's a little bit softened up. This butcher paper is gonna do its job hopefully and give us that bark, give it nice and a little bit of a bite to it when we eat it. We're gonna put this back on. Once it's done, we still don't get to eat yet. We're gonna pull it off once it's done, and it's gonna sit in a cooler for about 2 hours. I'll show you that part here in a little while. I'm gonna go get this back on. I don't wanna lose a bunch of temperature. It's that time. We're sitting at 201. Remember, we're not eating right now. We're gonna pull it off the smoker, put it inside of our cooler here, and let it sit for at least 2 hours. 2 to 4 hours, great. So we don't even get to know if our experiment worked. We have to wait a whole nother 2 to 4 hours. So let's get it off. Oh my goodness, that feels so soft. And then the other thing I do, because this is a little bit of a deeper cooler, I just throw a couple of towels over it to try to keep a little bit more of that heat in. Back. 3 hours of resting is what we did. It's as long as I could wait. I was gonna try to do 4, but 3 is all I could do. So let's pull it out of here and see what we got. She is. We'll pull out the thermometer. Ooh, slides out like butter. Here comes the moment of truth. Did it actually regain the bark after we put the butcher paper back in it? Ooh, it looks pretty good. Flip it over and see what we did here. Ooh, it came back a little bit. To be honest, I'm a little bit nervous about how it's gonna taste, because typically, I'll put a picture in the video of what the briskets typically turn out like. They usually have a much crisper bark than this. So far, the test isn't looking super successful. The final results will be on the taste though.
All right, let's take a quick break and compare these two briskets. The one on the left was cooked only in butcher paper. The one on the right's the one we just finished. You can see the one on the left has a much crisper, thicker bark to give you that better bite if that's what you're looking for.
I have my helper werebear here again. First off, should we do its bend test? Oh my goodness. Oh, see, it's already falling apart. So we know we got it nice and tender. We saw how juicy it was. The bark's not as crisp as it normally is, right? So this is what I want you to do, Warren. We're gonna try a piece of this, okay? We're gonna start with the flat, then we'll try some of the point as well. What we're comparing it to, not just does it taste good, does it taste better than when we normally do it with just butcher paper.
Okay.
Ready? Give her a whirl. Okay. All right.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Okay. I gotta sample it one more time. Maybe one more time. So, it is moister than when I normally do it in butcher paper,
That's pretty true.
but I do miss the bark. It's not as crisp a bark. What do you think? What do you feel about it?
It is, yeah, like you said, it is a little more moist, but the bark's just not, well, as crispy. But it's still delicious. That's why I said brisket is my favorite meat.
Another helper here. We got to get multiple opinions. I'll give you my final verdict at the end. But, Bob, what's your favorite part of the brisket?
The bark.
The bark. You love the bark, right? Okay, first off, I got him just a piece of the bark, because that's how a lot of times he likes to start eating the brisket anyways. So I wanted to test it to see what he thinks compared to our normal traditional way of cooking it. You just eat and enjoy that for a little bit. I might snag another little morsel as well. I got one of the burnt ends. Oh man. I'm telling you, season your meat until people complain about it being too strong of a flavor. Because I put a lot of seasoning on this meat, and it's perfect. The seasonings, the taste, the textures, it's so good. How's that bark compare?
It's really good.
Good? As good?
Tastes the same.
Tastes the same? Awesome. We're joined by one of our subscribers. Want to introduce yourself?
I'm Stuart Henry. I'm always interested to come and taste test some tasty meat. So
Okay, we're gonna do the same thing that we did with everybody else, all the other judges. So we're gonna start with the flat, so he can try that and see what he thinks of it, and then he's gonna move on to a point piece. And he's gonna give our feedback Now he's never had a typical brisket I make, so he doesn't understand the difference in the bark that we get normally, but he can still judge, is this a good brisket? Is it worth trying out, right?
That's really good. Very tender.
Yeah, it came out really nice. It came out super, super good. And then the point usually is the part that has a little bit more juice, a little bit fattier piece. You want to try that one, should be good. Well, all of it's good. It's brisket.
Yeah, that is really good. Got a little bit of a kind of jelly from the fat on it.
Yeah, rendering that fat. Once you get it to like 201 is where I found, if you pull it off before 201, like 200, depending on the brisket, sometimes the fat hasn't rendered as far as you want. 201, 202 is kind of where I found the sweet spot is to make that, it's almost like, it sounds weird to people who haven't had it. It almost sounds like a gelatin dessert, but it's so good. Well, awesome. Thanks so much for stopping by. Anything else you want to say?
No, it's fantastic. I think the second one, that extra fat is what kind of did it for me. If I was picking one or the other, I'd probably take that one. Both delicious.
Agreed. And that's why I say if you're going to a barbecue restaurant, a lot of times they ask you if you want it sliced or chopped. The chopped is the point. And when you've eaten brisket a lot, the point's what you want because it has all that extra fat in it. The sliced stuff is typically the flat piece of it. Still good. It just doesn't have near as much flavor and near as many juices as the point does. Next helper here, our next judge, Noni News back. Now, Naomi, do you typically like brisket?
Not that much.
Not that much? Okay, so today we cooked it different, and we're gonna see what you think. We're gonna start with the point, or the flat, sorry. This is the flat, and then we're gonna move on to the point. What do you think of that?
Good.
Okay, now try this one. What do you think of that? Okay, compared to other briskets that we've had at home, which one do you like, this better or the other one?
I like this better.
Why?
Way better because it doesn't have that much bark, and I get more flavor in it.
Okay, so you think it has more flavor, but you like that it has less bark. Okay, so I think that's what we're coming to on the conclusion with this is, if you like a lot of bark and you like it nice and heavy and thick on the bark, then I would always use butcher paper. If you want it as moist as possible, maybe only use foil. But if you want kind of a mix of both worlds, try this out at your house. Try using just foil in the last 2 hours. Do butcher paper. Now here's a couple of things that I learned while doing this. Is when you wrap these in foil, they come up to temperature so much faster. When I put this in the foil, it was like 2 hours for it to jump from like 160 all the way to 190, right? So just something to be aware of while you're cooking. And then you'll notice I didn't slice everything else up. We're pretty much done eating here. Typically, I wouldn't have even sliced down the middle yet. What I would have done is kept the whole thing whole and just sliced off as we needed it. And the reason I do that, when I put it in the fridge, it just stays a lot better. And then you can do really good thin slices for like brisket sandwiches and things, okay? You want to tell everybody goodbye today? All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Once again,
Bye.
thanks for watching.
All right.
Please like and subscribe. Even hit that bell if you'd like. And like always, enjoy some bloopers on us.
All right, so I'm going to shove the probe in here. And then let's go fire it up. So let's fire it up. Fire it up, fire it up. And we're back. You know what we call this where I come from? We call that the stingray. She floats around and claps her wings when she jumps out of the water. It's pretty awesome. Out.
Yeah.
Let's get you a good, nice, small piece to start. Okay, tell me what you think of it.
Yummy.
Yummy?
That is salt.
Boom, 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 boom. Barry's barbecue.